Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I'm going to bring you my review of Never Hike Alone 2 because it's Friday the 13th weekend. This was just released, and I'm always a huge fan of fan films. When they're made well, when there's clearly a lot of love and effort put into them, I want to sort of highlight that. And so, if you've seen Never Hike Alone, you kind of have a sense of sort of the aesthetic that the filmmakers here are going with, and I'm remembering the director's name now, Vincent DeSanti, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, which I may not be, but I'm doing my best with that. The first film I think was kind of lightning in a bottle from a fan film perspective. I think when you think about Friday the 13th fan films, or really any kind of horror ODE as it would be, when you're referencing such a beloved property as, whether it was Halloween, whether it was Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, this does a really good job, or at least the first one did a really great job of sort of mimicking and mirroring what we would want to see in a continuation of the franchise, right? And I think with the first film, it was kind of a nice reinvention of what we would have seen in sort of the earlier movies, and a nicely different approach, right? And I think in that way, the novelty of the first movie kind of stands out for me. And I will say that I think the first Never Hike Alone is a little bit better than the second one, but that is not to say that Never Hike Alone 2 is not good. I think it's totally worth watching if you're a fan of the Friday the 13th franchise. So let's talk about that a little bit. One of the things that I really like about this is that the filmmakers, everybody involved with this, has done a really good job of actually trying to provide some kind of closure to the franchise, right? So, I don't know if the thinking here was that, we don't really want to focus on another one. We've got Tom Matthews, who played Tommy Jarvis in the original films, here for this. Let's give him the kind of send off that we want to give him, or that fans would think he would deserve. And that's what they go with here. And I'm not going to have any spoilers in this review, but what I will say is that it's gory, it's bloody, it's got a lot of that Friday the 13th kind of stalking through the woods sort of stuff that you would expect. But this one is more of kind of a traditional Friday the 13th movie than what we got with the first Never Hike Alone, which again, I think kind of succeeded on the novelty of what it was, sort of the originality of it. And I thought that that one did a lot of really kind of creative things with the filmmaking and the way the cameras were framed and all that. This one, again, is much more of kind of a traditional motion picture, right? And, at an hour and 13 minutes, I'm looking at it now, an hour and 13 minutes, it's not overly long, but it feels more like, let's make a more traditional Friday the 13th installment, but let's also try to conclude the storyline for Tommy and see what we can wrap up here. And, it's not often that you get definitive conclusions to franchises. And obviously, this is sort of an unofficial conclusion because it is a fan film, but I'm thinking of Halloween Ends and how that one really tried hard to sort of wrap up Michael Myers' story. Here, this one definitely wraps up the Voorhees story, at least so far. I mean, there's always kind of that hint of, potentially some other thing could bubble up here, pun intended. But anyway, yeah, I think that this works super well. I think that there was a lot of clear sort of effort into making this the best thing that it could be. And, I don't have any idea what the budget was. I'm sure I could look at that on IMDb. I haven't looked at it yet. But, I think it's great. I think for what it is, it's really a lot of fun. I think the effects are good. I think the actor who plays Jason does a good job of kind of mimicking his movements that we're kind of used to over the many decades of him existing as sort of a horror icon. So if you have any interest in this at all, and if you've never seen Never Hike Alone, the first one, I would say definitely check that one out. And there was also another one, I think it was Never Hike in the Snow. I can't remember the exact title of it, which I have seen also. But this is a really nice kind of way to sort of cap off this fan fiction franchise, I guess, this fan fiction spinoff. So I really like what they've done here, and it's impressive. And honestly, because we don't really get any kind of new mainstream studio Friday the 13th films that often. I mean, the last one was 2009, right? And everybody's just kind of waiting in limbo now to see what happens with the franchise officially when it comes to sort of big budget productions, that sort of thing. This is the next best thing. And it's really kind of a godsend, right? If you're a fan of Jason Voorhees and the franchise as a whole, it's nice to have this as something to kind of lean on. So I personally really enjoyed this. I thought it was a great wrap up. But if you've seen Never Hike Alone and Never Hike Alone 2, and I think it was Never Hike in the Snow, I believe. I'm going to double check that. Yes, it was Never Hike in the Snow. I knew I had that name correct. It's been a while since I've seen both of those. But if you're a fan of these, and if you've seen these, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think that they're worthy kind of pseudo successors to what we get with sort of the big budget studio productions? And I'm using that term loosely because really, with maybe a couple of exceptions here or there, the Friday the 13th movies are not supposed to be things that have big budgets. But anyway, what do you think about these films? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and happy Friday the 13th.